My name is William Harvey Zeigler, better known as Harvey Zeigler, and I was born in Damascus, Maryland on 108 east of downtown Damascus on March the 4th, 1920.
Good. And your family had been in Damascus a few generations at that point, is that right? Tell me how your family came to settle there.
Well, in twofold. One grandfather came from South Carolina, Charleston, well, Orangeburg, South Carolina, and he was a runaway slave. So they started out with 30. When they got to Washington, it was down to about 10. And then when they got out in Montgomery County, it was still 10. So he settled in Montgomery County off of Route 80 in Maryland, Montgomery County, and they named the little town Zeiglertown, and he had about 4 sons. Each one of them had a piece of property on the property, about an acre, and his name was Doc Zeigler. And on the other end of the spectrum was the Hoses. They were on the Monarch's Plantation, which is located north on 27 before you get to Montgomery, Maryland. While he was building, and he would do landscaping and all of this, he would jack of all trades. His name was Richard Dick John Hosey, and he had 8 kids. He had 2 sons and 6 daughters. And my grandmother married Doc Zeigler. She was from the Hosey side. So then the Zeiglers began to crop up, and I'm one of 13. We had 9 girls and 4 boys, which made a total of 13. So the Hosley and Zeiglers been in Damascus for 3 or 4 generations.
Yeah. And when you were coming up and growing up, it was still a segregated state, county. Tell me some of your recollections of what it was like to live in those times.
Well, living in Damascus was father of Montgomery County. You didn't get any recognition or anything. I couldn't go to the rec center, couldn't go to the swimming pool, couldn't go to the restaurant, and if I went to the stores, I'd have to go in the side. They wouldn't loan money, the banks wouldn't loan money, so they called you colored people at that time. So I couldn't go to the church, didn't go to the school. Everything was a blank so far as color was concerned. Well, it was very blatantly, discrimination. If you didn't look out for yourselves, well, by being an ethnic group, you wouldn't get anything done. So we had to bind together, teamwork and harmony and faith. That's the only thing that kept us going. Because it was segregated, so we had to depend upon the white man to get what we needed. My father worked on a farm, so he didn't make that much money, but they gave him allowances like meat, flour, sugar, chickens, eggs. That's how they survived.
You went to elementary school kind of nearby.
Well, at first, we lived on 108, about 3 miles up and 3 miles back. But they had a white school just about 2 blocks from where we lived, so we had to walk up and back 3 miles when we could go to school 2 blocks. So, it didn't make sense to me. To spend all that much money, separate but equal, didn't work. Unconstitutional.
Right. And tell me about getting to high school. First of all, where was it, and how did you get?
When I graduated from elementary school, I went to this little 1-room school where I had this pot-bellied stove and had 4 rows of 5 seats, which made 20 kids. And in the process, the wood floors, they would put used motor oil on it, and that was hazard, but there wasn't nothing we could do, so we had to take it and go with it. And I feel like if you want to be treated equally, you should have a decent school to go to. And the teacher was your doctor, your lawyer, your principal, your pastor, and everything. And you relied upon them, and they were dedicated in order for us to get an education. And when I did graduate from elementary school, I couldn't go to Rockville because I didn't have any transportation. So I went to Baltimore City. So I went there for a year, and then the PW me said $200 else you have to get out the school system. So I had to come back and wait till the next year to go to Rockville. Well, Rockville didn't have any buses because the county didn't put any buses. You had to get your own transportation. Trustees of the school had to buy buses in order to get you to the high school. So I hitchhiked for about 2 or 3 months, 20 miles down and 20 miles back to get down to Rockville High School. And that started in 1927. And by that means they put me under hassle. I was under pressure to get to school, get an education.
Did your parents instill a need for education?
Well, yeah, they were very much into seeing that you got an education, so that supposed to have been the main focus of getting an education. You could better your living condition. But really, it didn't amount to much because when I went into government, I had a supervisor just had a 7th grade education. He was making more than some of us who had a high school education. So that didn't mean too much, really.
You graduated from Lincoln High School, and what did you do after high school?
Well, high school, I helped my cousin, who was a huckster, to sell produce and stuff. And then after that, I went to work at Fort Meade, Consolidated Engineers. I had a contract for doing all the water and sewage and everything for the Army, Fort Meade. And then after that, I got inducted into the Army.
And what was your experience in the Army like?
Well, that was segregated too. December the 7th, December the 7th, they declared war. December the 8th, I went into the Army. So I stayed 4 years in the Army. So I spent 3 years in the States and 1 overseas in the ETO, European Theater of Operation, in Europe.
So that was still segregated?
Still segregated.
When did you start to see some progress?
Well, we marched and we did everything for housing. Then we said we need to have a civil rights law passed, and we got that passed by Martin Luther King. March on Washington, and then 65 we got the Voting Rights Act. So things began to move in the 60s. We got kind of sort of consideration from the government. The Kennedy brothers, they did a lot. The marches and the bus rides in the South and all that helped. So around 60 we began to see a little change.
But it really took a lot of different people doing a lot of different things.
It took.
And you were involved.
Well, when I was after I came back from the Army, I even tried to get membership in the American Legion, and they told me point blank, no, we're not accepting an application from. They still use the word colored veterans. So then I decided to go about doing something different. So I went to Frederick and started AMVETS. So I was the founder, and I got to be the commander, and charter membered it, and everything worked out pretty good. We helped the veterans who come back from overseas to get educated, hospitalization, housing, all that. So I was a front runner in that. But it took a lot of work right here in Damascus because I couldn't go to the church up in Damascus United Methodist Church. But they invited me before they integrated. They integrated in 1968. But in 1966, I spoke to them and I presided. And then they asked me to come and belong to the prayer breakfast that they have every third Saturday So I got to be a co-chairman of the prayer breakfast. And from that, I founded a thing called Organization for Racial Harmony for Damascus. And we've done a lot in the school system through knowing the principal who attended the meetings. And I got, let's see, I started out with human relations to teach it in the system, and they didn't go too much for that. Then I asked about putting black studies in the curricula. So they said, well, the only way you could do it be elective. So then I talked to the deputy of the curricula, Dr. King, who was the deputy director at that time. So he took me on board, and we worked on trying to get a curriculum to help everybody. So when we integrated, things began to work out smoothly. Transition began to go along more smoothly.
Well, tell me about your experience with the bank.
Well, in the bank, after I got back from the Army, they were building naval ordnance, and they were building the Navy Hospital, NIH. All these structures were going up, so they needed building material. So they had to get the material there. So I said, you get a truck, maybe two, you be able to be out there where the money is. So I went to the bank and asked for $10,000, and I guess they thought I was crazy. So they told me to come back the next week, the directors would meet. So I went back. Before I got back there, the dealers told me, hey, they turned you down, So I went and I talked to him, the president of the bank. So he said, well, you don't have enough credit, blah, 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 something. So I said, well, supposing I had credit, could I get it? Well, we won't talk about that. So I went to GMAC, General Motors and Substance, and got the money, and I bought 2 trucks. So every month, I'd write $300 on the bank, and he was looking at it. So eventually he called me and said, anything you need from now on, you can get, because your credit good at this bank. And I told him, not for me only. What about the other colored folks, or African Americans? So he said, well, if they meet the criteria, they can get the money too. So therefore, I did a little something to help, And then I also lodged a complaint with GSA over Germantown, where they had the Department of Energy, and they didn't have no colored African Americans in none of the shops. Electric shop, carpenter shop, plumbing shop, communication, elevator mechanic, no black. So I say, hey, what's going on? So then I applied for a job, heavy equipment operator, which I knew I was highly qualified, because that's what I was doing. So they gave it to the white guy, which was doing a job 2, and made him 6th grade, wouldn't give me 3. So I just made a complaint with the EEO, Equal Employment Opportunity, and then I saw everything caved in on me. I got shipped out, but eventually, by talking to people downtown about how they treated me and what went wrong, so I had the director of labor to come and talk to me. Then I had the security, and then I had personnel, compliance, procurements, everybody. I talked to everybody. And eventually they said, well, that was wrong, we're going to correct it. So they sent me back to Germantown with a assistant chief. So by me speaking up, not only did I get promoted, a lot of other employees got promoted.
Did it take courage for you to speak up?
I guess me crazy, I guess most of all. They said I was crazy, but it paid off.
What drove you to try to make a change?
Because I've been downtrodden so long, been pushed and shoved, you get tired of it. So you do something that you feel like's right, you correct the wrong, right the wrong. So they said to me when I went to personnel and said, don't blame us, blame your supervisor. You highly qualified, but here they got you 90 days marginal. So he opened books to me. I didn't even ask him for it. So then we began to move, and then I got to be, well, 2 years after I got promoted for this out to Germantown, then I got promoted to be in middle management, tech manager down HEW in Rockville in '72.
Okay, and then you became involved with the NAACP.
When they would give me a hard time over, excuse me, over to the Department of Energy, I belonged in the early 50s. So I got to become the youth advisor. I was already the youth advisor at the church. Then I got to be the youth advisor and counselor for the NAACP, Montgomery County branch, and also the state conference branches. So that was over in Baltimore. So I worked on March in Washington. I got 2 or 3 buses to go down there in 1963, August the 28th. So we did a lot through the NAACP. The NAACP helped me a lot. Wasn't for them, I don't think I would have made it.
How do you feel when you think back to those times? And I know there's still a lot to be done. Things aren't perfect, certainly. But how do you feel when you see the changes, when you realize the changes? And
Well, appreciate it, you know. Somebody had to do it, but it's a lot to be done yet still. So I'm satisfied with some of the things that have been done, but some I'm not.
it seems you've been dedicated all along to trying to improve things.
Yeah, but you get knocked down a lot of time by trying to push things, especially say you born 30 years too soon. I said that's not my problem.
What do you think, or do you think anything in your background, in your family growing up, inspired you?
Well, I mean, a large family, you know, you get pitted against each other sometime. And I go in the store, I'm getting it in there too. So I figured that if I could remedy the situation, because it needed to be done, because I was being neglected in some instances. So the same way in the system. So I said, if not now, when? Not me, who?
What would you say to young people today, young African Americans, but probably I think it applies to everybody, about where things stand?
Well, they need to know that they have to work. And not only that, not discredit the elders who have built the foundation for them, and they standing on their shoulder. It didn't come drop right out of the sky. Work. Well, one more thing I would like to say.
Yes,
one more thing I would like to say before you come.
No.
In 2002, my nephew, Warren over there, we started a Damascus Connection organization where we would have a bridge between the county and the local community and the government, where we could just express our thoughts so far as legislators getting things done. And it works out pretty good because we have got the lights up here in Damascus, got a stoplight. We did something for the library, and we have done a whole lot, and I appreciate him helping me, because one for him, I probably couldn't have done what I did. So, and like right now, I appreciate what he's doing, allowing us to come in here to have this interview.
Yes, I appreciate that too.